you how to get the SA951 programmed. Now, when we ship these out to you, we normally program them to your specs just to make it easier on you. But this is how you would be able to go in and make changes to the settings if you didn't like them or you need to adjust something. So you'd have to make sure the drivers are installed first. Those are on the flash drive that's included with the SA951. And then you would also need to install this terminal program. Once this is installed and you have everything up and running, choose the serial port or the COM port that your SA951 is showing up as. In this case, it's COM11, and making sure you're at 9600 baud. So now that we've done that, you can press @P to enter programming mode. And once you're in programming mode, you get 5 options here. These are the main categories. Now, once you go into these categories, these main menu items, there are some sub-menus in some of them. And then in other ones, there's multiple sub-menus. So, starting with a little get to know what's what, the number 1, which is codes, that's where your two-tone, single-tone, and DTMF sets are all stored at. Number 2 is the mode that the unit would operate in. Is it going to operate in two-tone or long-tone or single-tone mode, or is it going to operate in DTMF mode? The settings is pretty much all of the miscellaneous settings and operating settings. So tone timings and stuff like that are in there. We'll get into that here shortly. Number 4, the timers. Those are your output timers. So those are like where your bells and lights and other relay activated devices, external devices that are activated by the controller when there's an alert. That's where those settings are at. And then 5 are actions. And actions is a pretty complex section. So that lets you set the actions for all the different functions of the controller in there. So let me just go in the one first to show you your code settings. So you can see here that DTMF is option 1, two tones is option 2, and one tone are option 3. So let's go to two-tone because that's what we're using in this demonstration. This will show all 12 sets of your two tones. Notice there is a 13, but as you can see, if you read the description down here, 13 is for cancel. So we don't want to cancel anything out in our situation. But if you did have a siren like for tornadoes or whatever the case may be, and you need to cancel an alert or cancel that siren out, then you could put something in spot 13 right here, and whenever those two tone sets were detected, it would cancel out all the relays and all the audio that would be playing through the controller, and it resets it. So it's very simple to add tone frequencies here. You do have to put a leading 0 in front of your numbers if they're not in the thousands. So if you have like a tone of 598.0, you would have to enter 0598.0. So just to give you an example, we're going to press 01 down here so we can enter that tone frequency in. So we hit 01, and here it tells you, your tones are entered in, 4 digits, a period, and then the 10th of a second. So here we're going to enter the same thing that's in there now, just because we don't want to change anything in here. So you do 05980. It'll automatically put the slash for you, and then you're going to put the second number, your second tone, which is tone 2, which is 05660. So now you can see, obviously nothing's changed, but that's a good thing. So we've kept the tones the same. So that's how you set your tones. If you don't want anything in that tone slot, you would simply just enter all zeros. Hit the escape button to go back. Notice this takes you back to your DTMF two-tone or one-tone. Let's look at one-tones. So these are single-tone activations. So in our case, we have a countywide all-call, which is 1103. And that would be for more than, I think it's like 8 seconds long. But we have it set if it's more than 3.5 seconds, it'll activate the alert system. And that's in some tone timing stuff. So you can have 6 single or long tones. There are some rules you have to follow for your long tones and single tones, and that'll be in the instruction manual. DTMF codes, as you can see here, this is just a test set of a bunch of DTMF codes. If you are in DTMF mode and code 1234 was pushed in, that would activate whatever was assigned to that in the Actions tab, which we'll get to later. We're going to go all the way back to the main menu. Now I'm going to go into the mode section, which is number 2. This is a very simple section, and this is just saying, are we doing two-tone and single-tone activations, or are we doing DTMF activations? So in this case, and in most people's cases, it's going to be tones. So we're just going to press 1. You'll see that it says it was set the tones there, and then it goes back to the main menu automatically. Going to the next section in the settings, this is a pretty detailed section here, so I'm going to go through each one, and this is going to take a few minutes. So number 1 is your two-tone lengths. If you press on two-tone lengths, this will tell you how long does the first tone of sequential paging have to be for it to register as an activation. And then if it's matched with tone 2 for that amount of time, then there would be an activation. So I shouldn't say a tone 1 activation, but a valid tone 1 has to show for 0.3 seconds. So usually you have half second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 3 second tones. So 0.3 is a good number. I can see in some cases where you might need 0.2 if you have really fast tones. But the lower you make this number, the more probable of having false alerts with like siren key ups, especially if you have a tone that goes from, low to high, and the siren's winding up. Or if you have tones that go from high to low and the siren's winding down when you transmit over the radio, it could potentially activate your alert system. So 0.3 is a good setting, even for half second tones. So basically, if you need to change this, you would simply just type in 0. The decimal point is automatic. You do not have to press the decimal point. And then 3. And then for tone 2, you do the same thing. So 0, the decimal point automatically enters itself, and then 3. So you can see it stayed the same. We didn't change anything. It takes you back to that sub menu. And now we're going to go on to number 2. Number 2 is your bandwidth. So when you go into number 2 here, you'll see that you can choose letters A through O as an Oscar. And you can see that there's a time next to that, or there's a number. That number is a time. I'm sorry. I am tired. It is not a time. It's a percentage. So as you can see in this section here, you have letters A through O, and you can see 0 to 2.9 are your options from A to O. So 0 would mean that the tone would have to be exact. This is your bandwidth. So this is how much fluctuation are you allowing on the tone into the decoder unit, or the SA951 decoder controller. So by default, we set the threshold at H, 1.5%. That gives 1.5% of play. So if your tone is 1,000 hertz, that means that it could be off by 15 hertz either direction. So any tone from 985 to 1015 hertz would trigger as an active tone or a valid tone. In this particular unit, we do have it set at 0.9, and this is just a test unit. So, but I'm going to show you, if we press H to set it for 1.5, you'll see that the new bandwidth did set the 1.5. Now, once you enter your bandwidth, it takes you back to the previous submenu, and the don't care is a if you were to go to don't care, so don't care basically is for DTMF and allows you to do like group calling. So if you have stations that are, say, 1 2 3 4 A, and everything is always A, you could just put a pound sign, and then that would be, your don't care what those last 4 digits are, as long as the first 4 or the last 4, whatever the case may be, match up, that's fine. So that is DTMF don't care. We're going to hit no because we want to keep it the same. So you're going to see it's currently programmed to no, and then it takes us back to the previous sub menu again. So once more, you're going to see the single tone length there is number 4. And that's very similar to number 1, where you have the 2 tone lengths. Well, this lets you choose how long your long tone has to be, or your single tone rather. In our case, it's set for 3.8 seconds, because our longest 2 tone sets are only 3 seconds for the second tone. So by doing 3.8 seconds, you know that as soon as you have something that long at the right frequency range, that it is a matched alert for your tones. So we're going to leave that the same. I'm going to hit the escape button to go back one. and I'm going to go to the PA timer. So this is how long the PA system would activate for an alert. So if you have a call and you have a tone set activate, or you have an input is pressed and it's set to activate the PA output, this is how long that would activate for. So in this case, we have it set for 60 seconds. So that means if a call comes in for any one of those tone sets, it would open up for 60 seconds and then it would reset. Now, you can set it to anything you want, but you just have to remember there is a monitor switch on the controller itself. So you can ground that switch using a push button, a toggle switch, whatever you want, that would allow you to put the system into monitor mode. And then this would simply give you an increased volume level, because your monitor levels and your alert levels are different volume levels. So just something to keep in mind, but you do need to set this for alerts, because if you do not have monitor mode enabled, this needs to come on so you can hear your call. 60 to 90 seconds is typical. Some departments do like 5 minutes. It's totally up to you how long do you want to hear that radio traffic on your dispatch channel after there's an alert. So if you have a crew in-house that responds right away, then 60 to 90 seconds is probably fine. If you're a volunteer department and people are coming from home and it takes them 2, 3, 4 minutes to get there, then you may want to leave it on for 5 or 10 minutes so that people coming in can hear if a call has been canceled or what's going on with that call. So going back now to the next thing, you'll see number 6 is filter repeat MP3 audio. And what this does is, you can see currently it is turned off. So let's turn that on, because that should be on. So what that does for you, the filter repeat MP3. So if you have 4 different fire tones, and each one of those fire tones has the same pre-alert sound, which is like a high-low or a beep or a Squad 51 theme or whatever the case may be, the same alert audio will not play more than once per activation of the alert system. So if Engine 1, Truck 1, and Squad 1 all have the same pre-alert tone, and all 3 of those were dispatched on the same call with the 3 different tones they're assigned, you would only get the initial high-low or alert sound, and then the unit number or whatever you have assigned to play as the unit, which we'll talk about a little later in the audio files, will play through accordingly. So I know it's kind of hard to grasp right now, but we're gonna get to that. So just bear with us, or bear with me, I guess I should say. So we're gonna go into that so you can see it, and you can see it is yes, which I did just set that. I'm sorry, it is late here, guys. Now 8 is radio MP3 played last, yes or no. So what this is you can set up your inputs to transpond out of your connected radio, if you have a radio that can transmit connected to the radio, to the SA951. And what that would do is, you could set up an emergency button on your front ramp, and when somebody pressed that button, it could set off an alert in the firehouse first, and then it could transpond or send a signal out over your radio system. So this is just asking, do you want that alert that's sent over the radio system to play before or after it alerts in the firehouse? So it says radio MP3 played last. And, currently that is set to yes, because we do want, in our case, we want the people in the firehouse to know there's an emergency on the front ramp right away. And then if there's nobody at the, in the firehouse, then it'll broadcast over the radio. So we have that set to yes. We're going to leave that at yes. I'm going to go ahead and, oops, I hit the escape button twice. That was my fault. So it actually took us out of that. So we're going to go back into the settings because we're not quite done yet. Now you can see the monitor source. So number 9. This is important for somebody that may be using VHF or UHF paging on a conventional channel as the decoder. Let me word that properly. So if you have a VHF module that we provide that's just decoding VHF or UHF, but you also have an 800 megahertz system that say does not get the two-tone data over that, but you want to hear that audio instead of the VHF or UHF radio or whatever radio you are using for tone decoding, you can choose which source you'd like to monitor as your primary. So if you were to connect it into the accessory / pager port, you would choose 2 for pager. That would be the 5-pin DIN port. And you can wire a radio into that port. That's not a problem. Matter of fact, we do make the cables for the DIN port and we make the cables for the radio port. So it's a DE9 connector, which is basically a RS-232 cable style connector for the radio. And then we use the DIN port because it is a direct connection to a Motorola or a Unication pager. So if you wanted to have that as your primary audio, then you would use 2 for pager or an accessory. 1 would be if you wanted to use the connected radio as your primary audio or your monitor audio source. If you have the pager set as the monitor audio source, it does not affect the Station Alert 951 from decoding your tones that are connected into the DE9 port, which is the radio port. So I think for our purposes, we should have this set as 1, which we do. So we'll press 1 again just to confirm that setting. And as you can see, it takes you back to the sub menu. So that's it for the settings tab, which is tab 3 on the main page. So we're going to escape and go back. So now you can see you have your main menu back there at the bottom. You have your codes, mode, settings, and timers. So now we're going to go into the timers and talk a little about that. This is pretty straightforward, but we need to explain it. So each output is a relay. The relay is rated for 5 amps. So each relay is controlled here. So in the software, you can choose how long a relay delays after an alert before it comes on, how long it stays on for, up to tenths of a second, how long it may pause for, and then how many times it would repeat. So in most cases, you can see here, these are mostly lights. They're all set for 60 seconds. Number 5 is the single strike gong, and you can see by our settings here that we make the gong wait 3 seconds. That way the audio alert can play through your speakers first. So it might be like beep, 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 engine response. Maybe what is programmed for that to say. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But that's what may be programmed to say. So you want that to come out first, which takes about 3 seconds. So you delay the gong from striking for 3 seconds. Then you apply power for a half a second. You turn the power off for a second. And you do that 3 times. So when you repeat, you're not repeating the delay time. It's just repeating your on time and your pause time. So in this case, this gives you 3 strikes of the gong. And I think in our port 8, it's set for 60 seconds, but our output 8 is actually set to turn the speakers to full volume. And that's something else that you can read about in the manual. But there's some special volume controls that we have that have a 12-volt activation point that will, even if that volume control is at 0, it will crank her all the way up to 10 or 8 or whatever the maximum number is on that, only for alerts, and then it would reset after the alert cleared. So we don't need to make any changes, but if you did need to make a change, which I just want to show you real quick, let's press 1. And here you can see where you can enter 0 to 255 seconds, with the exception of the on time, which can be set all the way up to 9,999 seconds. Sorry about that. Had a radio go off in the background there. So what you do here is you just have to enter the times. You kind of just need to know where you're at. So when you start off, you're starting at your delay time. So that's 3 digits. So just do 000, and you see that slash is automatic. Now, the on time is 60 seconds. So it's 0060.0. Now, the slash and the periods are automatic. So we're going to do 0060. You see that decimal point automatically enters itself, and then you press 0 again. And then the rest are zeros. So 000, 000. It's that simple. It's really not super complicated. I know it's not like a nice graphical user interface, but software engineers cost a lot of money. And I'm trying to give you guys a product that is very reliable, that doesn't cost $10,000. So bear with me. We will eventually have a graphical user interface for this so you can save your settings and everything. But for the meantime, this is just how it is. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of this, and we're going to go into actions. Action is going to be very detailed. This is probably going to be the longest part of the video. And I'm trying to make this video 30 minutes or less, and I'm at 20 minutes already. So we're going to see how well this works out. So here are where you get to choose actions for different things. So you might be like, what's an action? Well, action is which audio source should you monitor when something happens, what audio file should play. You know, there's a lot of settings in here. So I'm going to skip DTMF because basically DTMF, two-tone, and one-tone are all the same. So I'm going to go straight to two-tone so you can have a big picture, because that's the one we really have set. So if you go in here to two-tone, it's going to say, hey, now, do you want to set your relays? Do you want to set the live PA? Do you want to set your audio files? What do you want to do? So we're just going to do relays first. We'll show you how these outputs work, which is what the relays are. So here you're seeing, as you can see, there's 13. Remember when we went through the codes and looked at two-tones, there was 13 spots, 12 are activations, and number 13 is a cancellation. So that being said, now you see these other numbers, 18, like 1 and 8, 1, 5, 8, 2, 8, 4, 5, 8, 6, 8, and just 8. So remember I was telling you output 8 turns our speakers full volume. So everything, whenever there's an activation, we always activate relay 8. Relay 1, right here, just highlight it so you can see relay 1 here, that's connected to our red light. Relay, or output 2 or relay 2 is connected to our blue light. Relay 3 is connected to our red and blue light. And relay 4 is a green light. Relay 6 is an amber light. So different tones activate different lights, and this is programmed here. Number 5, remember I was telling you how relay 5, that weird timing where it was like delayed 3 seconds, on for half a second, off for a second, and it cycles 3 times. Well, 5 is the klaxon. So this is my main fire department tone. So right here, we're going to use 1, 5, and 8. So we get the red light for fire, we get the klaxon 3 times, and we get 8, so the speaker goes full volume. Now, if you had 5 different things you wanted to activate with something, that's perfectly fine. Let's just go ahead and go down here, and we're going to type in the relay we want to change the settings for. We're going to do 13 in this case, so we're going to type in 13. And we want to activate relays 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. And just press enter. So now you can see whenever 13 has an activation or a tone that meets that criteria, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8 is going to come on, whatever those outputs are connected to. So we don't need that because it's a cancellation tone. In theory, you're supposed to cancel everything. The only reason we have 8 selected is because the system actually will play a message when you cancel, saying that the call is canceled or that last tone's canceled or whatever you program into the unit. So we want to make sure that the speakers stay full volume so people can hear cancellations. So I'm going to go ahead and escape out of this. Oh, and another important point about these here, excuse me, if you don't want anything to activate with that tone, maybe you just want audio to play, but you don't want any like outputs to activate, which are like your lights, bells, buzzers, you know, other things that are connected to the outputs, you could just type a 0 in here, and then nothing as far as relays will activate. So we're going to go back one more, and I went back too far, sorry. Go back to actions, and we're going to choose two tones again. And we're going to choose live PA, which is number 2. And now you can see right here which audio should the controller go to when it picks up a set of tones. So just say you guys have a mutual aid company, right? And that mutual aid company is your dispatch center, dispatches you for calls for that jurisdiction, but they have a different radio, and you want to be able to switch directly to that radio audio when your station or when your dispatcher alerts your station. So say tone set 1, code 1 up there, right here, code 01. Let's say this is that case. So you have your other jurisdiction's radio plugged into the accessory or pager port, which can be used for that secondary radio. And when tone 1 goes off, you want it to go to the other county's radio for 60 seconds or however long the outputs are set for. So you would just go in here and you type in 2, And now, whenever that activates, it'll play your alerts and everything, but instead of switching to your dispatch audio, it'll turn the other county's audio on. It's just an idea. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be used that way, but it's also used for when, like I said, you're using a VHF or UHF radio to do analog decoding because you don't have two-tone over your P25 system, but you want to hear that crisp, clean P25 or digital audio for your through your Firehouse or your station. Then you could have your P25 radio connected into the DIN port, which is the pager/accessory port, and you could have the VHF UHF radio connected to the radio port. And then in that case, all your tones would be automatically, you would program them to go to 2. So you want to definitely hear the dispatch from input 2, which would be the pager. We call it the pager input, but it is the accessory/pager input. It's that 5-pin DIN. And we might reword this so it's better to understand, but I think most people understand it pretty well. So let's change this back to 1, or I'll be wondering why stuff's not working properly later on. And we're going to go ahead and escape out of this. We're going to go back in two tones again. And then we're going to go to MP3s. Now this is kind of like how you set all your alerts. So there's a whole chart in the owner's manual that explain which numbers, these are audio file numbers. So this is audio file 1, audio file 2, audio file 15, audio file 254. There's a list that explains which each audio file is. And you'll notice that there's 3 slots. So the first 2 slots are the alerts that will play when there's a call. So for example, this one here is actually not correct. It shouldn't be 002 here. It should be 001. So let me fix that. So we're going to go 001, then we're going to 014, and 000. Now you can see we fixed that. So these are all fire. Yeah, these are all fire companies. So 1 is like a high-low tone, and then this is the station number. So this would be like Company 1, Company 2, Company 3, Company 7, Company 9. That's just what these audio files are. That's what we have programmed into the unit. This is a test unit, so these audio file numbers may not be the same for the end users. I haven't quite finished the audio files, so we'll get there. And you'll notice that the third one here is all zeros. So this should be kept all zeros unless you need to transpond or transmit back automatically to the dispatcher once you receive an alert. So if you, for some reason, have this connected to something and the person who is activating the system needs to hear and the alert has been successful, this could be programmed to play an audio file back over the connected radio. This is called transpond. This will be in the owner's manual. This is not something that most people would use, but it's here just as a nice feature to have just in case. So if you need to change an audio file, it's just like other things. You would press the number you need to change. And I showed you this already, but I'm going to do it again. Just type in 001, and then that's 015, and then 000. So now it's going to be like a high-low tone, and it's going to see station 1 respond, or whatever the audio file says. So we're going to go back, get out of audio files. That was pretty much it for audio files. Now we're going to go to inputs. Inputs is a big one because not only are they the 4 inputs that are on the back of, or on the front of the controller, they're also carrier detect for the primary radio, pager relay closure detect. So if you have a pager connected to the accessory pager port or a weather radio that has a relay that closes when there's an alert, then you can actually trigger an alert that way. And then you can also choose the, we also have voice detect on this unit. So you could actually plug a, say an iPad that's linked to Active 911 and have like a focus group set up on your iPad. So only Active 911 audio is passed through the controller. And then when the controller detects the audio, it actually trigger an alert. So you get like a pre-alert if you get your actives before you get your page outs. So just something to think about. It also works with like your alphanumeric pagers if you have those and it has an accessory port on the back of it. We could somehow interface into that, or you could build a cable that would interface into that. So let's go into the relays for the inputs. And as you can see, there's 7 inputs. And up top, it explains what each one is. So there's input 1, excuse me, input 2, input 3. So input 3 and input 4. Couple of special notes. Input 3 is switchable between the input 3 spot on the front of the controller and pin 8 on the radio. So the reason that input 3 has that functionality is because pin 8 on the radio port is got a jumper on it. So you could actually choose if it's going to be input 3 or input 4. I'm sorry, input 3 or radio pin 8. And the reason that's important is because some departments are going to P25 call alert, which is where there's a special number assigned in your P25 radio. In your radio programming department or your communications specialist, they can actually, I'm sorry, I got to do something here because if I don't, the system will time out. So I'm going to go back in here. So that input can actually be set to activate when there is an alert for that special code in that P25 radio. I know this is specific to Motorola, I believe. I don't think the Harris radios offer this feature that I know of, but it can be programmed to activate VIP1 pin on the APX series and XTL series radios, which in turn would send the ground signal out to the controller, which would activate an alert that you would assign to input 3 in this case, which could be, your station alert. And then input 4 acts as an input or a cancel all. If you set this to cancel all, which is in the main settings, somehow I think I missed that. I'll go back to it. But if you set this to cancel all, what will happen is when you press a button that's connected to input 4, it will actually reset all the relays, turn them off, and then it'll play an audio file of your choice for the cancellation, and then that's that. Now, input 4 can also be jumper selected on the PCB to either be input 4 on the front of the controller, or it can be pin 9 on the radio port. And that's so you can do some extra stuff with the radio, or if you have like a DMR radio or a P25 radio that has other features that you may need to set off different alerts for using the other VIP pin, because VIP1 and VIP2 are linked in order. So VIP1 is linked to input 3, VIP2 is linked to input 4. Now, number 5 is the pager. So I'm just going to let's see here. Pull this back up so we got this up. So number 5 is the pager. So that if the pager detects, the pager accessory port detects an activation, which is usually a relay closure on the pager, which would send an activation signal to the controller, then you can see that it's going to do 5, 6, and 8. So 5, 6, and 8, relays 5 is the gong, and then whatever your 6 and 8 are connected to. I don't remember what they are connected to, if they're connected to anything on my controller, but that's what we have this set up to for testing purposes. And then you can see here, 6 is carrier detect. So this is when a radio transmit, it sends like a COR, COS, or a carrier signal. I'm basically saying that there's a transmission or an audible signal on the channel you're listening to. This is good for a talk group dispatching. If you have a dedicated radio that's only monitoring for activations on a talk group for calls, then you can have this set up so that if it detects carrier on that channel or talk group, that it would set off the alert system. We do not use that, so we have that set to 0. And for some reason, when you put 0, it just shows up as nothing, which is fine. As long as there's nothing there, it's not going to do anything. And then Vox is obviously voice activation. So this can be used with any slew of things. This is also jumper selectable on the PCB. As far as if you want voice activation on the radio or the audio input port, which is they run in parallel to each other. You have to use either the audio in or the radio port. You can't use both at the same time. Or do you want the Vox activation to be on the accessory/pager port, which is that 5-pin DIN with the audio input there? So that's what that lets you choose. Pretty straightforward. You have the same options here when you look at your inputs as far as your live PA and stuff. So when you hit these different buttons, you know which audio source should go live. So we have 4 set up as a cancellation button. So when we press input 4 to cancel everything, we want to turn off all audio. So you can see 0 means that it goes off. As you can see, 1, 2, and 3, they're set up to turn on the primary radio that's connected to that DE9 port, the 9-pin port on the front of the controller. And you can see that the pager, which is 5 right here, if you get confused what the numbers are, 5 is the pager. And this is obviously set up to listen to the audio on port 2, which is the pager. So the pager activates, the pager will give you the audio from the pager. If you get an alert with your two-tone, it'll go back to your two-tone or to your radio. So there's a lot going on here. And I know I'm probably speeding through this, and a lot of you guys are scratching your head and probably going to email me and call me and be like, dude, we didn't understand what you meant when you said this. Well, it's pretty complicated, and I could probably make a 2-hour video, and it's really not that much easier to explain. It's just, it's trial and error. You can't mess it up too bad. Going in there, I wouldn't change any settings if you don't know what you're doing. Always ask first. Watch this video a couple of times. I think I've pretty much covered everything in it. So we're going to go back here. We're going to go back into inputs again. And we're going to show the MP3 files are exactly the same for your inputs. So you can see here, input 1, 2, 3, 4, your pager, carrier detect, and then voice activated. So now you can see here I have a transpond set up, which means if you were to press input 2, send a signal to it, it's going to play this audio file out through the connected radio. That's just for testing purposes. Like I said, most people, these will all be zeros. There shouldn't really be any numbers here unless you have a purpose to transmit over your county radio a message. And it's going to be whatever you have assigned to this audio file. So we're going to have 0 through 99. Or 001 through 099 will be audio files that you'll be able to just choose from. And those are going to be different type of alert tones, and then different like voice files. We have the basics, so fire, police, engine, squad, rescue, ambulance, medic, basic unit, stuff like that. We have audio files. So you'll get that high-low tone here set in number 1. And then number 2 audio setting here, which is your second set here, could be the unit. Or you could just do the units, or you could just do a beep. You don't have to do 2 audio files. You could just do 1. So if you just want a beep, then you just put something here that's a beep, or some type of like ladder 49 theme or something. Could be, you could put that option here, and then leave the rest blank. Leave them zeros, and then you'll only get that pre-alert tone when there's a call, or that alert tone when there's a call. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to get out of this. Go back to inputs. Now there is this here where you can see are your, is it normally open or is it normally closed? So how do you want your circuit to work? Should it always be closed and then when you press the button it opens the circuit? Or should it just always be open? Or should it always be closed? No, should it always be open, and then when you press the button, it closes the circuit? So those are your options for most of these. And then you can see here it has a special note. It says for carrier detect, 0 is low on, where 1 is high on. So this allows you to set this. So if you have a radio that goes high, like 5 volts, when there's carrier detect, you can change that to 1. 99% of radios are carrier detect are low, which means it grounds. So that's not a problem there. And then for number 6, that is number 6 is carrier detect. For your pager, it should always be left as normally open. That's just how the relay functions inside of the pager. So you have your best luck keeping that at 0 if you have a pager connected. Now, if you have a different accessory utilizing the accessory / pager 5-pin DIN, then by all means adjust the setting as necessary. So I think that's it. So I think I missed something in here. Okay, so I did number 7 in your settings. This is where I was talking about the input can be a cancellation. I'm not sure if I talked about this or not, but this should be set to yes for us because we use the 4th input as a cancellation, so I can shut the system off quickly when I'm doing testing. So I think we covered just about everything. If you want to escape all the way out of here, you just press the escape button a couple of times and it'll show you the programmed exit. And that's that. You can unplug the USB cable, the unit's ready to go, plug it into your radio, and it should be all there is to it. If you guys have any questions, you can always call me or you can email us. We do prefer email. We've been very busy lately. The email address for us is support@911systemsllc.com, and that's systems with an S on the end. So thanks for watching this video and sticking with me through my hiccups, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good day.